This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 371 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund's likely absence of next year's Champions League after their 2-1 loss against Eintracht Frankfurt, an aggravating performance against Manchester City with an even more aggravating result as Dortmund will have to overcome a 2-1 deficit in the home leg next Wednesday, and we will preview tomorrow's match away to VfB Stuttgart. We're here coming to you live on tape on Friday noon. I apologize that we couldn't record something yesterday. I had it all scheduled and all figured out, but life came in the way. So I'm very pleased that you're still here with me now on this very late date for the recording. Matthias, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Almost all my windows are installed in the house. Got a few more to go today, so that's also part of the reason why yesterday there was no recording. So yeah, sometimes life happens and you need new windows, and there's just never a good day for that.
Right.
So, but no, it's all good. It's all good. We get to talk about such wonderful things today.
Yeah, sometimes Windows Update just comes in the way, Matthias. This time it was more physical.
You know, since I'm the dad and you're not a dad, you tell a lot of dad jokes, but I applaud that.
All right, so let's leave it there. Like Dortmund left Mats Hummels in Cologne and move over to the game against Eintracht Frankfurt, which obviously was not as much fun, even though ESPN Plus elected this time to show actually both halves of this match. Matthias, we had an interesting starting lineup, let's put it this way. Edin Terzic, I think the hour of desperation called, and he put on Schulz as a left back in order to move Rafael Guerreiro in midfield. Basically what happened is that Schulz then was the lucky guy to hit the own goal from, I think it was the first Kostic cross of the game in like the, 11th minute, so very early. What do you make of this game, this lineup, and everything in general? And if possible, stay brief because A, we don't have too much time, and B, do not screw up under any circumstances because I do not plan to edit anything. So everything that goes wrong will just stay on.
Well, that's good to know. You shouldn't have told me that. What's frustrating about this game, if you look at just the general match stats, Dortmund were theoretically the better side. And in those first 10 minutes, Dortmund were clearly the better side. They suffocated Frankfurt. Frankfurt got nothing. I mean, they got nowhere. They couldn't get out. It was like a power play. And then that own goal happened. It didn't necessarily change the dynamic, but the problem was the longer the match took, Dortmund seemingly got more frustrated and desperate, and Holland really didn't get any serviceable balls, and they got dispossessed in bad positions. Jude Bellingham he was dispossessed 5 times in the center of the pitch, and that, as everybody knows, is probably the worst place to lose the ball. Obviously you're in front of your own goal is really bad, but there you usually lose possession because you're in transition, you're moving forward, and to transition back to defense is then very difficult, especially when you're facing a team that lives off the counterattack. And to me, the desperation stat is always crosses. That's for me, that shows when a team 33. Oh. Dortmund played 33 crosses. And 57 long balls. Okay, those are stats that reek of desperation. and you could see it in the game. Whenever a team has an exceptionally high amount of crosses, it's desperation. It's because the other team is not allowing them the space. And Frankfurt is a very good team. They are very well coached. They are good in almost every single part of their game and how they do it. And Dortmund just got frustrated. They could not get it done. Now, shot location, stuff like that is all fine. Again, we will see the simple statistic that Frankfurt attacked Dortmund's right side. This will be a theme when we talk about the next game we talk about. 41% of all Frankfurt attacks came via Dortmund's right side. During the match, they actually said the statistic that 14 of the goals that Dortmund has conceded have been conceded from that right defensive side. Obviously, teams are like, that's where we're going. That's who we're going after. Nico Schulz was unfortunate. It's kind of, and this will be another theme we talk about in Manchester City. You know, Nico Schulz is rightfully a bit of a target also because of the price tag. The price tag's not his fault. Okay.
No, I think Nico Schulz was a bad decision from Michael Zorc.
Correct.
And that's sort of, the chicken's coming home to roost, like right this second.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was also at a time when the market for a left back was not good, and Guerrero was possibly leaving. So it was like desperation time.
Yeah,
and
but just
Nico
think
Schulz,
about that, Matthias, for a second. That when the decision was made to sign Nico Schulz, it was under the belief that Guerrero would be leaving. So this would have been our basically starter, and without a backup, basically, at least nothing that I can really see. Paslak maybe, but you know, Dortmund would be so far worse this season, and they're not incredibly great, to be honest, if it's Nico Schulz there all the time and not Guerrero at all. So just
well, especially in a flat four. I mean, that's the thing. He was bought from a system, and he had a really good time at Hoffenheim. There's no doubt about it. He was very good for them in that wing back role.
Yeah, but that's because Julian Nagelsmann had a special play developed for him.
Yes, correct. The problem Dortmund had was they bought a player for a specific type of role and a specific type of system that was not theirs. That was also the time when Lucien Favre came. Favre does not play wingbacks. Now, obviously, we switched to a back three with wingbacks, and Nico Schulz looked a much better player at that time. But what hurts Nico Schulz's perception, of course, is kind of like, of course, he's the one who had to score the own goal. All right, it could have been anybody standing there, but it had to be him, kind of a thing, you know. And we can't forget that Guerrero's also looked suspect defensively multiple times this season.
Yeah, okay? I mean, he was the one covering Andre Silva when he scored the winning goal, and he was also nowhere near getting to that Kostic cross. But what I will say about the Nico Schulz own goal is that I still think a good keeper would have saved it, because Marvin Hitz, with all the effort he did, he was fully stretched out, but I think he just used the wrong arm. He needs to, I think in German we call it übergreifen. I don't know if you like crossing over with your arm, that makes any sense to you, but basically if you use the other arm, you have way more force to punch the ball clear. And that was, I don't know if he tried to tip it or if he even got his hand to it still, but it looked very clumsy and awkward. And obviously it's a split-second decision, but so is every goalkeeper decision when you have a shot going to your goal, and it was the wrong one. And if we talk about bad decisions, I mean, I still think having Roman Bürki around is maybe not the most ideal scenario, and maybe we can debate having signed him a couple years ago was the right call. But basically, having a less than ideal goalkeeping situation also led to Dortmund conceding this kind of goal, because, you know, when you have Marvin Hitz in goal, who clearly is the number 2 goalkeeper and is sort of understood as the backup keeper, and if your number 1 keeper does not perform and everything sort of falls apart on that position, that's obviously a problem, and yet another chicken coming home to roost, I would say.
Well, see, the thing, you know, I'm a Roman Bürki apologist.
I know. I'm just saying it's adding up, and it kind of showed, especially in this game. Also with Emre Can as a right back, Also not ideal, let's put it this way. Obviously, I think Meunier and Moret were both still out, if I'm not mistaken, even though Moret, I think...
One was on the bench.
Yeah, both were on the bench.
It was recovering.
Yeah.
It was recovering. I have said I'd rather see Akanji at right back and then Chan in central defense. I'll be honest. I think I even said that in the last
Maybe
podcast. Because Akanji has played at fullback position and played it well, and he's really fast. And Akanji's positioning is usually spot on.
Sadly, in my notes here, it says that he lost a key duel against Luka Jovic before.
Yes,
Dortmund
he got out physicaled in a situation. That can happen. Luka Jovic is a powerful striker, and it's always different when someone's running at you than when you're trying to backpedal with them. They're always going to out-leverage you in situations like that. I would challenge Mats Hummels to deal with that. It's kind of one of those, that was a bad situation where he just got beat. And getting beat can happen. But when it comes to open play positioning and speed catching up with someone, Akanji might be the best one Dortmund have defensively. But be that as it may, they made the decisions that they did. With Roman Bürki, I've come around to it's time to upgrade at the keeper position. If I look at 4 seasons, he had 2 brilliant ones where he was one of the best keepers in the Bundesliga, and 2 seasons where he was not good. And this is one of those seasons. It's not always his fault. I've spoken about the psychological knock-on effect. If the keeper doesn't trust his back line, he's more likely to take risks and make mistakes because he's unsure, and then you're caught in 2 minds. But I agree. I wouldn't start Marvin Hitz. I don't think Marvin Hitz is a good starting goalkeeper in the Bundesliga. I think Roman Bürki is a better keeper. And the quote-unquote brilliant saves that Marvin Hitz has made, if you really look at them, 9 times out of 10, they were lucky. Like he gets shot in the face, or in the gut, or somehow it gets his knee. There's way more intent with the reflex saves from Roman Bürki than Marvin Hitz. And that's my opinion. You can disagree with it. That's cool. But if you look at those situations, they're like, oh, brilliant save. It's like, well, you got shot in the face. That's
that's
different.
What we used to say about Roman Weidenfeller too, though. That was his super skill.
Yes,
basically.
but it's Roman Weidenfeller. Yeah. Okay, he's like, he's next to Stefan Klose, like the untouchable. So, but no, Weidenfeller is like prime Weidenfeller versus prime Hitz is a way better version of Hitz. They're very similar keepers. Roman Bürki is like, I would say, a little bit more well-refined keeper overall. But no, he with Bürki, it's more a psychological thing. And a lot of goalkeepers are head cases. That's no doubt. That's why there's such a gap between world class and everybody else. Because like you said, picking the right arm is a mistake or a reflex that's trained over decades into keepers that Manuel Neuer doesn't make. He uses the right arm almost always. And that's your big difference. And you can look at a lot of keepers. They will use the wrong arm in situations. They'll use their dominant arm. Whereas someone like Manuel Neuer, Alisson, those top level keepers, they'll use whichever arm is the best for a given situation instinctively based on also their training and their natural reactions to it. So I agree that was a compounded situation, but be that as it may, Dortmund should have done way better. Yeah. And at this point, with some of the things you have in the squad, you just have to accept that you're not a team that gets clean sheets. All right. So you have to figure out a course of action. What happens when we concede first or concede late? Both those things happened. And Dortmund had issues. Yes, obviously there was the equalizer, but then Frankfurt just outplayed them as Dortmund pressed for the win because Dortmund was in a situation where they had to win. Frankfurt didn't have to win. Okay. A draw was perfectly fine for them. And they are so deadly on the counter. Andre Silva, after a kind of rough start with Frankfurt, has bedded in beautifully. and is he has now scored 22 goals versus Haaland's 21 goals. And people kind of forget, everyone talks about Haaland and Lewandowski. Everybody forgets Andre Silva has scored 22 goals this season.
Yeah, I read a tweet
one of the best goal scorers in this league.
Yeah, I think someone, was it ESPN FC tweeted recently whether like Harry Kane is the best striker in the world right now or in form right now, etc. because Lewandowski is out. And I think it was Tyler Twellman then came up with a list of really good strikers in form, and Haaland was obviously one of them, but he totally forgot Andre Silva, which if you're basically a pundit of a show that has the Bundesliga rights, I expect you to do better, because 22 goals is amazing and he's on a really fine stretch of form. And it's obviously great for Frankfurt. I'm really happy for Frankfurt because they totally deserve this. And if they're in the Champions League, they're probably the only team there that I can actually root for. Wolfsburg are just going to crater out as they always do because they're irrelevant. Leipzig, I don't care, and Bayern, I don't like. So basically,
I agree with you there. As a former resident of Hessen who went to Frankfurt games when they were playing in the second Bundesliga, I'm really happy for them, and that fan base especially, very happy for them.
Yeah, no, also Frankfurt as a club, they really turned around. If you think about when Dortmund won the championship in 2011, they played the last game against Eintracht Frankfurt with Christoph Daum as a coach, and they got relegated. And the only thing Frankfurt were famous for basically was holding up a banner called Randalemeister, if you remember that. And I think their fan base had an entirely different image, also problems with a lot of right-wing extremists. And obviously the same thing holds very true for Dortmund. Dortmund is a neo-Nazi hub, unfortunately. So that is something that needs to be worked on. But right now, Frankfurt, the players, the club, the culture is very outspoken against these kind of notions, and I think Germany and the Bundesliga is better for it. So but let's return back to the game real quick, because you mentioned Haaland. He, I think in the first half, had two really good chances to score. One was saved by Trapp, and the other one he just put wide in the second half. He had another chance. Not as prominent maybe, but the point is that right now he is dried up a little, maybe regressing to the mean, or maybe just not in his tip-top shape. I don't know. Comes at an unfortunate time maybe, but apart from Haaland though, I don't remember too many opportunities, and to me that's obviously a problem. That Dortmund have not really managed to find their mojo without Haaland and have other scoring output. So at least players that can like aim a couple of shots at goal. I think we had Guerrero with a couple of shots. We had this one Dahoud shot that went over the bar, but otherwise, I think Terzic said it pretty well himself that, bad decisions all around. Again, when we should have passed, we took the shot, and when we should have taken the shot, we passed. That's what he said after the game, and I think that holds very true. That from a Dortmund perspective, and you just said at the very beginning, in statistics, Dortmund looked better, and I would say this was sort of a game of wasted opportunities for Dortmund, because I think especially Dahoud later on in the game, there were like 3-on-4 situations and stuff like that where Dortmund just needed to play one more pass to basically get a 100 or golden opportunity or something like that. And for some reason they just couldn't get it done. And that is obviously credit to Frankfurt's last-ditch defending, which has been excellent, especially considering that they were without Hinteregger and Hasebe, which obviously are two pillars in their team. But at the same time, that's just very frustrating, because you would expect just better from Dortmund in such a clutch game.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at shots, and again, it's one of those frustrating games where Dortmund should have won. It's like both Köln matches. Could have, should have won. If we look at shots, Haaland and Guerrero both had 4 of the 19 shots. Next highest after that was Mats Hummels with 3. Of course, he did score 1 goal. Yeah. And then, it's Can and Reus with 2, and then a few onesies here and there. Hazard, once again, was not present. He was on the pitch, but he wasn't present. He had an awful game. Reina coming in really didn't do anything. The biggest bright spark really the last few weeks has been Knauf. And I don't know enough about him. I think they're encouraging signs, but as a team, it's a discouraging sign if Knauf is like one of your best wingers right now are Marco Reus, who's obviously a football senior citizen at this point and coming back from injury, and a kid that no one's heard of outside of the inner circles of Dortmund in Knauf. Hazard, no. Reina, no. Obviously, when Sancho is fit again, he'll just slot right in. Okay.
Obviously.
I mean, that's yeah, no kidding. But you would think that Hazard again start season with the injuries, and Gio Reyna, who had some really good matches, but overall is kind of below average at this point. That they're outshot. That a kid comes up from the second team in Knauf who outshines them. I would love actually to see Knauf in the side with Moukoko in there because they had played together. So I'd just be curious to see that synergy. But that's the problem. It's Haaland is a little off, and it can happen. But when Haaland is off, then where are the goals coming from? It can't be from Guerrero taking 4 long shots. It just can't. That's not acceptable with the talent in this team. Bellingham's not one who takes shots. Dahoud isn't. I mean, yes, he'll take a shot, but that's not his goal. Really, if your striker's not getting it done, your attacking wingers have to get it done. And if you're pretty much just have the only reliable one is Marco Reus, with all credit to Marco Reus, that's just not enough. You don't have enough options for scoring. Whereas then you look at Eintracht Frankfurt. Well, Silva and Jovic, each of those can punish you at any given time. And even coming up from the wingback position, not Erik Durm, but Kostic is incredibly dangerous, and people coming in behind that. But they rely on 2 goal scorers that rarely fail to deliver. And Dortmund really just only have the one right now until Sancho comes in. I think that will drastically change the dynamic, but that does show the frailties in Dortmund's squad that we all, myself included, thought was better at the beginning of the season than it turns out it is. And if everybody thought that, even all the experts, then that just sometimes can happen. So those are some of the decisions you just have to make now. And anybody who's now using hindsight and say, oh, I knew back then. No, everybody thought Dortmund had the second best squad in the Bundesliga when it started. Everybody.
Well,
let's say 99% of people thought this was a good squad and the attacking side.
Yeah, I'm
looking at attacking
give
talent.
Lars of all people the credit for probably knowing a bit more than everyone else, but that's because he's the smartest.
Again, 99%. He's the 1%er.
Exactly.
Lars is a 1%er. But in an attacking sense.
Yeah, what I wanted to say though is the crux of this game maybe a little bit is summed up by the fact that you're basically trying to save your season in the last 10 minutes with Reina and Ranier on the pitch, and obviously Knauf for Hazard and Reus coming off. And it's not really ideal because neither Reina nor Ranier really have any rhythm, and Ansgar Knauf, I think, in this particular game played 27 minutes of his thus far, I think in total 44 in the end, before his start against Manchester City. So if we talk about automatism or really throwing players out there that you hope can make a difference, to me more like Hail Mary substitutions where you're just hoping that fresh legs make a difference, but it's not exactly that they are such high quality players that they're going to overpower this Frankfurt team now. And obviously then Dortmund were just punished for it in several ways. That they once again tried to thread the needle and it didn't come off, losing the ball I think at Frankfurt's box, and then obviously conceding this counterattack. But at the same time, it's not just the midfielders that aggravated me in this regard, especially for the final goal, because I think the distances between Dortmund's attack when they are pushing and the rest of the team is just far too high. I know that the midfield line basically cancels out offside, and it always sort of need to be mindful of that. But at the same time, I think you still need to push a little higher. That if you play this high, you must have a better counter pressing. And I mean, that's a lot to ask for in such a situation in like 3 minutes before the tie is over, and I'm sure legs are fatigued, and obviously pushing Mats Hummels up high is always a risk because he's just very slow, and Frankfurt have darn quick players. But collectively, it just wasn't good enough. It was not on a technical level, it was not on a tactical level, and while I think maybe a draw would have been also a fair result and Dortmund should have won this game, we can absolutely not complain about Frankfurt then basically having the momentum on their side. And as Lars correctly pointed out, Frankfurt totally deserve to be where they are. They now have 3 losses only compared to Dortmund's 10, and that just speaks volumes. And to conclude this Frankfurt segment, I just, because we're heading into the Stuttgart game in the Bundesliga, now, obviously, that was the game where Lucien Favre got fired. Right now, obviously, Dortmund are 7 points off the top spot. They're closer to 10th place right now than 4th. And I did the comparison to Lucien Favre's 19 points in 11 games. He had 6 wins, 1 draw, 4 losses, and a points average of 1.72. Terzic now in 16 games in the Bundesliga, 24 points, 7 wins, 3 draws, 5 losses, and points average of 1.5. So his is arguably worse than Favre's. And the quote-unquote Terzic table, if you will, measured from his appointment to now, Dortmund are in 6th place behind SC Freiburg. So, obviously hindsight is always 2020, Matthias, even though it's 2021 already. But I don't really know what to make of the Terzic appointment, because there was a little honeymoon period, and then came the Cologne game, if you will, and at the same time, it felt like having to let Favre go was absolutely necessary. But yeah, to me, it's a very complicated morass of decisions that have me more scratching my head than anything else, really. And I'm very short of explanations right now.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain things. Obviously, the loss to Stuttgart was, as we would say in German, ein Offenbarungseid. I mean, that was just abject. It was a team completely, void of any cohesion of confidence, and a coach who looked like he had given up on the sidelines. I mean, if you watched his body language, it was just pure resignation, and it almost, that game forced Dortmund's hand in needing to make a change, knowing probably at that time that they had already been eyeing Marco Rose after the summer or after the season anyway, knowing they can't get him now, getting an appointment now at a high enough caliber to be long term. There just wasn't anybody there, arguably. And so Terzic, I think, has done very well for his level of experience, knowledge, and age and time in the game. So I will applaud him for that. Obviously, he's making mistakes because he's naive and he's still learning the craft of tactics and coaching. He seems to get more of a reaction out of the players emotionally, which I think was lacking under Lucien Favre. But there are simple things. My wife's not tactically astute, and she's not going to be offended if I say that. But, we watch the Dortmund. No. So, but we watch the Dortmund games Saturday mornings. And against Köln, she said, wow, there is just a lot of space between Dortmund's midfield and attacking lineup and the defense.
See, she
Köln
can
are just
host the
walking right through.
I'm not needed here, really, because I just said the same thing. I'm sure she said it with better words also.
She said it. She said it again against Frankfurt. She's like, wow, it's the same problem like in the game before. Did they not see that? That when someone who's not like into tactics or into the sport can spot something so extremely clearly, and I will say this, that would not happen under Lucien Favre. Lucien Favre would not allow that space. Now, the problem with Favre is he wouldn't necessarily move the defensive line up. He would move everybody else back a little bit. I agree with you that the defensive line needs to move up more to compact that space. Because if you compact that space, then a lot of Frankfurt's attacks wouldn't have come. I mean, that the 2-1 would never have happened if there was a more compact space between the two units. Just they would have choked it out. And they did that in the first 10 minutes. Dortmund did that perfectly, and then it kind of stopped. So that's where I believe when Marco Rose comes in, or any coach, could be any coach starting in the summer, that has more experience, is tactically very astute, that you won't see. I mean, when you watch Gladbach, even when they were down in form, you didn't see that kind of stuff happen. And that's very basic tactics that Terzic, he just isn't there in his coaching development. He might be one day, but he's not there right now. What bothers me is that I don't know if the problem is Terzic doesn't see it or if the players don't know how to deal with it in game. That I don't know. And that's a decision that obviously they can only make themselves. So I don't think anybody knows unless you're actually in that locker room.
Yeah, but I'm 100% convinced that they know it at Dortmund. If your wife can see it, I'm sure Terzic and everyone else can also see it. I'm sure they're not oblivious to it. And I don't really like I said, I'm short on explanations today for a lot of things. Obviously, Matthias, you said in our very shortened pre-pod talk that this basically means the Europa League, if at all, because Dortmund still have to battle that one out with Bayer Leverkusen / RB Leipzig. If they make it past Kiel in the German Cup, I think if you win the cup, you're automatically qualified for the Europa League group stages and don't have to go through the playoff nonsense. But obviously, Dortmund still could fall down further in the pecking order because they do play Stuttgart next, and that's obviously a mismatch in my view. I'll say more about that later. But Matthias, what does the failure to qualify for the Champions League next season mean for Borussia Dortmund?
Well, it means they're more in a position of possibly needing to sell Sancho and or Haaland. Also because those players demand Champions League football, which I can totally understand. Yeah. Not playing in the Champions League one season and playing Europa League, it's not the end of the world. Yes, given the pandemic, it hurts financially because obviously any money that they bring in through the sale of Sancho and or Haaland, which is going to be in excess of, it's going to be 100 million plus for each, somewhere in there. They're going to have to use a big chunk of that to pay off debts, which every club has debts right now. I mean, look at Barcelona. Okay. But that's not a Corona problem, Barcelona. That's been years. You don't get €1 billion in debt in 1 year. Okay. No. That's years in the making. But be that as it may, that changes the positioning. If it wasn't a pandemic year, not being in Dortmund's perfectly fine financially. They're a very wealthy club. Now they have to balance that a little bit because they're also a publicly traded club. So that means they have different financial parameters within which they need to work. Those are English words.
Unedited.
Unedited. That's fine. So it hurts a little bit. Also, prestige and stuff like that, but it might not be bad. And here's why. In my opinion, you get in Marco Rose. And whether it's Europa League, God forbid, Europa Conference League. I mean, if Dortmund don't get into Europa League, I just assume they don't play in Europe. Okay. Europa Conference League, I've said, okay, fine. It may not be bad because then you can test a lot of things and nobody really cares. And that may still be true because you bring in someone like Marco Rose. Think of Thomas Tuchel, his first season, Europa League. They weren't in the Champions League, and it helped them build a cohesive side tactics. They played very well. They played very well in the Bundesliga. And then they got back into the Champions League pretty easily for the next season. I think that same scenario can happen. And that was also a transition time for Dortmund then, as it is now. So it's not the end of the world. Financially, Dortmund will still be perfectly fine. The whole pandemic world will change within the next 12 to 18 months, hopefully. And also financially, things will balance themselves out a little bit more. So it's annoying to not be in the Champions League, but maybe Dortmund can win the one tournament they haven't been able to win in all their history, because they've won the Cup Winners' Cup, they've won the Champions League, they've obviously won the Bundesliga, they've won the German League and the DFB Pokal. This is the one that they haven't won yet. So it'd kind of be cool to win it. I mean, we said the same thing under Tuchel. It'd be like, it'd be kind of cool to win this one now. So with that, it's not the end of the world. It's a bummer. But I'm not like, I'm fine. And I think it could play to Rose and Dortmund's advantage in the long run.
Yeah, we shall see, because obviously a lot of decisions going forward have to be gotten right this time. Because if that trend continues and we'll be a team of 11 Meuniers at some point, then we'll maybe have the same fate as Werder Bremen once did, even though maybe less extreme, but obviously Bremen at some point, played Champions League quite regularly, and then over a long extended period of time, they just fell down the pecking order until they battled relegation and are now basically in Bundesliga no man's land. There's something that can happen to any club, also Dortmund. So it's going to be a very interesting period going forward, especially with Michael Zorc quitting. We'll see how that all pans out. But in the meantime, Matthias, there's still a little bit Champions League left to be discussed, because Borussia Dortmund indeed did not get hammered, as I predicted, 5-2 in the Champions League. I feel like Dortmund are very anachronistic to whatever I expect. When I expect them to play poorly, they magically pull out a performance out of their behinds. And if I expect everything to go well now, they play like they did against Cologne. So basically, it's a built-in guarantee that I'm always wrong. But that's just my fate. In the meantime, Matthias, it was a 2-1 loss away to Manchester City. A Manchester City team that I expected to be way better than they were, to be honest. But also at the same time, I expected Dortmund to be way worse than they were. And before anything else, I think we can talk about the, let's say, first event of the game, which was obviously a big controversial event, which was I think it was Jude Bellingham getting that booking right in the hold on, Kevin De Bruyne scored in the 19th minute. We obviously should mention that it was a big screw up by Emre Can, but then Matthias, I'm just going to gloss over that Emre Can screw up because that's almost automatic now in the Champions League. But then Jude Bellingham got fouled, scored a goal. Nevertheless, no goal and a booking for Jude Bellingham. What happened there?
Well, what happened was that a really, really bad refereeing team took charge of this, a team that doesn't regularly referee high-quality matches. And that's always been a constant theme when it comes to this kind of stuff, also in the World Cups, where you get referees out of countries or leagues where you're like, okay, they don't really deal at this level, so why are we giving them something so important? That was a Manchester City player cheating again and lying. I think Rodri pulled the same crap right around that time. Ederson embellished. He screwed up. He clearly fouled Jude Bellingham. And the problem was the referee blew the play dead before it finished. Had he waited for the play to finish and Bellingham scored, and they then went back to VAR, which they review every goal, they would have seen that Ederson was the one who committed the foul, Bellingham did nothing wrong, and Dortmund would have scored the goal. So, with that being said, it was a complete screw up by the referee. Now, of course, we had the whole penalty situation that wasn't a penalty, where they did change things. I can't remember. Did they actually rescind Chan's booking in that situation? No, right?
Because he got the booking not for the foul that was alleged, but for complaining, and that's irreversible, apparently. Even if you complain
that's
about...
stupid.
Yeah, even if you complain about having a penalty awarded against you wrongfully, even then.
That's idiot. That's asinine. That is completely asinine. So many rules need to be completely reworked. I mean, like the handball rule, that needs to be completely reworked. But that as well. I mean, he complained because he was unjustly penalized. And you can't rescind that when it was turned out that you were unjustly penalized. That's stupid. That's like getting a speeding ticket and it turns out you didn't actually speed, but you still got the ticket on your record. You know, it's like it's a weird thing.
Well, I mean,
you didn't have to pay the fine, but you got the points.
Fair, it's like you insult the policeman and then you have the speeding ticket rescinded, but the insult penalty still stands.
You know, if a booking gets issued for every time a footballer insults a referee, there wouldn't be a single player on a pitch. Let's be honest. They get abused nonstop, and you don't even have to be good at lip reading to know what's being said to these match officials. But this was just a ref who was completely overwhelmed by the situation. I read that one on the reffing team has now been suspended in Romania because after the game he asked for Haaland's autograph.
Yeah, that's
so he's
Octavian
been, like,
Zofre, I think is his name.
Correct.
And he's a linesman, and apparently he's getting autographs from high-profile players after every Champions League game or so, and then I think donates them to a foundation that helps people with autism, if I've read it correctly.
I mean, that's great, but that's not the way to go about it.
No, it's still deeply unethical to do that. It just is a bad look. It's I really like that the notion, and I think helping people with autism is very noble, and obviously a very complicated thing to do. I was working in elementary school, helping a 10-year-old kid with autism through life and trying to integrate him in the classroom. And it is not easy at all. So the cause is a great cause, and I fully support it. But it's just unethical because it just brings up sort of, maybe he's biased. Just not saying he is, but it just leaves a very bad taste in your mouth, as the entire refereeing performance did.
Yes, I don't think he's biased at all. I think he'd be biased if he was selling it on eBay. Then absolutely he was biased. I think this isn't. I don't think it affected his judgment, and he wasn't even the problem. Okay, let's be honest. The guy with the problem was the guy with the whistle.
Right.
I mean, that was bad. That was a bad performance. And what I'm happy about is Marco Reus finally scoring another Champions League goal for the first time in almost 3 years to be Dortmund's #1 Champions League goal scorer. He has 18 goals now, and Lewandowski had 17. They were tied, so it's good that Marco Reus has surpassed Lewandowski in that statistic. The more we can relegate Lewandowski, the better at this point.
Yeah, no, and it was a beautiful goal. I mean, if we, I could go on rants for ages why Dortmund were absolutely stolen, and it totally sucks for Jude Bellingham, the 17-year-old kid. It would have been such an amazing story for him to score against Manchester City, and I think it would have been also wholly deserved, and would have rewarded Terzic for his tactical ploy to put Bellingham up further ahead, something that Konstantin criticized a little bit, because it meant Dortmund were sometimes outmanned in midfield, which obviously is a key area. But nevertheless, in a couple of moments, that helped. Also, when Dortmund scored the then equalizer, because it was a pass from Emre Can to the somewhat further positioned Jude Bellingham. I'm really glad I'm not editing this at all, because that was a nice goal. Also the assist from Haaland, and very well taken shot. I think it would be great if Dortmund managed to create these kinds of goals more often, and also find someone like Reus in exactly that position, because Marco Reus has not been scoring a lot of goals, and seeing him deliver on such a stage is very important for the club, for the entire identity, I think, of himself as a captain. And it was really time to score that goal, and really gave Dortmund some hope, I would even say. I don't know if they can convert a 2-1 deficit into a tie that helps them progress to the semifinal. I have no idea. I think it's striking that Dortmund in this game against Manchester City were tactically sharp enough to hold off the worst, and that they did that with Ansgar Knauf in the starting 11, who really had his first cap at all for 19
and who led the team in tackles, by the way.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. And obviously Morey was back as a right back, which I think was a very important factor. And then obviously Can, Bellingham and Dahoud in midfield was a good combination, even though obviously Emre Can with that one pass really made it very easy for Manchester City to score on Dortmund. That was obviously still something Dortmund could have fixed, but it was really misfortunate. And when we talk about the referee, his positioning was also terrible the entire time. I feel like he was cutting off passing lanes for Dortmund as well. So I don't know if that played a big factor or not, but it certainly did not help. So Matthias, how did you see Ansgar Knauf in his very first performance as a starter, as a 19-year-old, basically Dortmund youth product?
Well, like I said, I mean, he led the team in tackles. He was not dispossessed very often. Jude Bellingham led the team with being dispossessed 4 times, which I didn't realize until I looked at the stats.
Because he was still against Soyhat?
Yeah, and which against Manchester City actually isn't that bad. His getting dispossessed 5 times against Frankfurt, that was a bigger issue. But Ansgar Knauf did well. He presented Joao Cancelo, who's basically his opposite at the left back side, and Ruben Diaz, who I believe was on the left side of defense. Mm-hmm. A lot of problems. I mean, Joao Cancelo and Ruben Diaz, you could argue, probably had one of their worst games with Manchester City, and even the commentators, who are always massively Premier League biased because they're English, even said so. I said, these guys are having a really bad game. And Dortmund capitalized on that. They pressed intelligently at the right time, and Ansgar Knauf did his job very, very well. It's very nice to see. Now, again, it does lead me to the whole, I'm a little troubled because the theoretically better or more experienced players are not being considered, but this kid is. So that either means he's really good or the other ones have really regressed a lot, and that kind of
I think both
adds
is
to the
true.
complications.
He is the most informed player, and also Dortmund are desperate at the same time. I think these are not mutually exclusive takes on this start, because obviously starting a player that to this date had 44 minutes of senior team minutes is just by definition a desperate move in a Champions League quarterfinal. But at the same time, neither Torgen Hazard nor Gio Reyna nor Ranier made any impression. And we haven't even talked about Julian Brandt, that they were better options.
I always forget about him.
Yeah.
I always forget Julian Brandt. Even before we talked about Frankfurt, who should start it, I completely forgot he's on the roster. And that says everything.
Yeah.
That says absolutely everything. And the one thing that says everything is, I think I mentioned it, that Frankfurt launched 41% of their attacks over Dortmund's right side. Manchester City did it 45% of the time. That was their focus, was Dortmund's right side, which obviously is Knauf's side, which also then leads to the fact that he led the team in tackles with 4. Jude Bellingham was after that with 2.
All makes sense.
And Manchester City tried to overload that side time and again. Foden played brilliantly. Phil Foden was by far the best player on the pitch for Manchester City. Led the team in shots, was one of the top tacklers and the top in dribbles. I mean, he was fantastic. He wasn't good at finishing. Let's put it that way. He should have scored at least one more for Manchester City, given his opportunities. But they tried to overload Dortmund's right side. It worked a few times, but they couldn't quite get the finishing product until, of course, they did.
Yeah, so
I'll leave that one up to you, Stefan.
Yeah, here's the problem that I have, and it's kind of annoying me a little bit, because on the one hand, Marco Reus scored after the substitutions were made, right? I think he brought on Delaney for the Hood, and he had Meunier replace Moret because it was the 81st minute, and that's apparently the players you pick. But I would have gone in an entirely different direction. First of all, I would have not brought on Gio Reyna in the 63rd minute for Ansgar Knauf. I would have stuck with Hazard, to be honest. But I think the overloading the right side thing issue was quite prevalent. I saw it happen during the game, and I thought this is an issue you need to address, and which is what I basically did when I said, when Meunier came on, I was like, yep, well, the 2-0 is basically incoming now, because I thought this is going to break our neck very quickly. And I mean, it did happen. It was another overload. I think it was Gundogan and Foden, basically 2 against 1 against Meunier. We obviously can talk about his positioning and reading of the cross, and I still think he could have done better, but be that as it may, he is Thomas Meunier. He makes positional mistakes, which is what was obviously noted in his scouting report before Dortmund signed him. So all that was known, especially in the Champions League. Meunier is happy to screw up. We all know that he got a yellow card against Dortmund without knowing he would get suspended, I think, and he was an idiot or sent off. I don't even remember, but yeah. So all that being said, I would have not opted for Meunier in this situation. I would have brought on Lukas Piszczek, who has tons of experience, and I'm fairly confident that his physical strength and stamina will hold for 9 minutes of regular time. And to help him out, I might have even put on Paslak there, just so that you have a more numerical advantage. And I would have said, screw the offensive thing. But the problem is, that's only something I would have said and done after Marco Reus scored the equalizer, because before it's a bit of a different game. You kind of sort of need that goal. And also when you bring on both Piszczek and Paslak, you just know the ball retention on that side is also not great, and you are susceptible to other kind of things. So it's very difficult against Manchester City. But before I say anything else, I just want to praise Dortmund for the ball retention they had against City. I think I personally was very surprised to see Manchester City not pressing Dortmund as hard as they can. They were not the quickest ball winners, which is unlike them. Usually, they want to win the ball back immediately, but Dortmund, I think, afforded themselves a couple of breathers in this game by just stepping on the ball and passing it around, even though Terzic said before the game he was not planning on doing that. And the starting of Ansgar Knauf also suggested otherwise. And we've all seen these games where Dortmund basically win possession and then right with the first touch try to pounce it forward and hit any team on a counterattack. And if this breaks down, they're under constant pressure. So avoiding that, I think, was very important. And having that sort of spatial positioning to do that is a positive. So while we were harping on this Dortmund side for a very long time, I think being able to do that against Manchester City in the Champions League and sort of doing it with relative ease and calmness speaks not for City, but it does speak for Dortmund. And I want to praise them there, because that really meant that they could keep the result rather close and arguably should have had a draw. And a 2-2 draw obviously means something entirely else than a 2-1 loss, because as Hummels said after the game, if you are basically automatically going through when the game kicks off instead of having to at least score a goal. It's an entirely different situation. Marco Reus said after the game that tactically they showed a good performance. And I think Hummels then with the criticism, that we showed the kind of performance today that we should show every 3 days, he said. It's not about making a step forward, but staying on that level also against Frankfurt and Stuttgart. Right now, we're very picky when it comes to top performances. So, that kind of sums it all up, and which is why I said in the intro that, it was an aggravating performance. Maybe not because Dortmund were playing poorly, but, seeing this team play so well, this team that screwed up massively against Cologne and so many other games, it's just really aggravating and annoying and vexing. So, yeah, it is what it is, but at least Dortmund have some hope for the second leg. Obviously, if it were a filled Westfalenstadion, I'd be very optimistic, actually, right now in front of an empty stand. I don't know. It just doesn't give me the Champions League goosebumps, if you will. But we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it. It's at least something we can talk about. I'll have another guest on Monday to preview this particular game, so please look out for that. Matthias, what else do you want to say on this Champions League tie before I move on to the Stuttgart segment of this show?
Well, I'd like to echo what you said. I mean, what's frustrating about this performance is don't want to have under Terzic had these performances. Think of Leipzig. Think of both matches against Sevilla. They are capable of doing it against exceptionally good quality opposition, but then they don't too often. So they're if a team isn't capable of it, like Schalke, okay, they're just not capable of playing well. And you're like, yeah, okay, fine. So they lost. At this point, you just accept it. The most extreme
examples. First, Barcelona, the most in-depth club, and now Schalke, the worst in-depth first team.
Anytime I can poke at them, it just fills my heart with so much joy.
Fair enough.
It's called Schadenfreude, and I deserve it. No, they deserve it. No, but it's just frustrating in that aspect. They can do it, and then they don't. So that's annoying. And Manchester City, you and I kind of after the game on WhatsApp message back and forth, and it was like we both felt that they played it was like arrogant.
Yeah.
It was, you even said like Dortmund against Köln. It's like, we're going to win this one. They're not really that good. They're a little bit down in form. We're Manchester City. We just basically have to show up, kind of like Barcelona with a 4-0 lead. And, and then that happened. And I believe it can happen again in Dortmund. I think it can absolutely happen because Pep Guardiola is a very good, great manager, tactical mind, but he's also deeply arrogant. And so that can get the better of him. And that does happen to some of these really top level coaches who win a lot and are great and applauded all the time and he's known for getting in his own head. And I think this result and performance, because remember, a 2-1 win at home in the Champions League tends to be one of the most dangerous score lines because the opposition only has to score once and you're like, oh crap, we have to score twice now, at least, and hope we don't concede again, because if we concede again, then things really can start to snowball. So I think there's absolutely hope. Do I think Dortmund will advance? No, I think Manchester City are just too good, but I won't give up hope. I'll be honest, I was surprised by this. And the problem is I think we could see a not so great performance on Saturday as a result of where the focus now all of a sudden is. Like if Dortmund would have lost 4-0, I think Stuttgart's in trouble. But because it's close and you're like, oh, wow, we could actually advance to the semifinals of the Champions League against PSG at that point.
Had to get that anywhere in there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, of course. You can't. Come on. Could you blame me?
No.
So it just.
But to be fair, Bayern are not as good this year, quality-wise.
No, I mean Flick also said they're significantly worse. They're just a horrible trash team.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's all Brazzo's fault.
Yes.
So
idiot. Shut
but
up.
that all being said, I do agree with you. I'm concerned about Stuttgart. So we can move on. Let's segue.
Yeah. No, I mean it's it's a mismatch. We've seen it before. Stuttgart are a team that can transition very well. They have a lot of fast players, and that's going to be maybe another paddling for Dortmund. I don't know. The maybe saving grace here is that Stuttgart, who are right now 8th in the Bundesliga on 39 points, so not too far behind Dortmund. They are 6th in the away table. However, they are 10th in the home table. Their top scorers are Kalajdzic with 13 goals and Wamangituka with 11. Unlike Dortmund, they have actually 2 scorers in double digits. But Wamangituka right now is out because he tore his ACL, I think against Bayern it was, in that 4-0 drubbing they conceded after Davis, I think, got sent off. That being said, also out is Mangala, who extended his contract today, if I am correctly informed, who I think also played rather well in that 5-1 win. That reminds me, we still have to mention the secret contract extension of one Manuel Akanji. And for Dortmund, Ansgar Knauf is doubtful after getting a knock in maybe one of those 4 tackles against Man City, but is likely to play. And otherwise, I think everyone who was fit against the Man City game will also be fit for Stuttgart. Obviously, I don't know in what kind of form. I'll also point out that Manuel Akanji is on his 4th booking, and I mean, this is the sort of game where you kind of foresee that your fastest center back maybe commits a foul here or there and gets that 5th booking and then would miss automatically against the Bremen in the Bremen game. The other match then, I think, after the Bremen game is the midweek game against Union Berlin. So we'll see how that all is being managed. Just wanted to point it out there. So Matthias, a very tricky tie for Dortmund if they want to have any quote-unquote rest hope to overcome that 7-point deficit. Really, everything has to go well for them now, right? So Frankfurt now needs like a crisis coming out of nothing, and Dortmund must waltz over every team in the Bundesliga, which I just don't see, not after 27 rounds of this crap. So what are we going to expect in Stuttgart, where I think traditionally Dortmund have never looked all that great? Just thinking about that Marc Bartra, Roma Bürki misunderstanding and just shuddering. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're going to see another 4-4.
Well, that was home.
That was home. That's true. But still, the Stuttgart side is very, very good. Granted, they collapsed against 10-man Bayern. I mean, in almost comical fashion.
But they always collapse against Bayern.
That's
like
true.
thing.
But still, that's kind of one of those where I'm like, okay, you had a man up. You're good in form, but not having Silas, who I think is one of the best young players in the Bundesliga by far, and I would love to see him in black and yellow, honestly.
Right.
I think that really does hurt them on their counterattack. It's going to be, I don't think it's going to be a pretty game. I think it's going to be another one of those games. Dortmund has the possession. Dortmund has the shots. Like, statistically, Dortmund's the better side. And then somehow they still don't win. I mean, it just have that feeling. In terms of Champions League, it was a must-win against Frankfurt. Had Dortmund not lost, I think a draw, then I'd still have some hope. 6 points. I think you could do that, especially since you still play some of the teams ahead of you. But that was a match that should have been won. By losing it, I just don't see any hope. If anything, they can maybe ruin the fortunes of who finished second, third, or fourth. Because I think at this point, Bayern are going to win the whole thing. And if it's not Frankfurt beating them for the title, I kind of hope they win the whole thing. Because I don't want Wolfsburg to win another Bundesliga title, and I don't want Leipzig to ever win a Bundesliga title. So I think it's all about Europa League at this point. And given the main competition for the Europa League spot is really, when you look at the table, is Bayer Leverkusen, knowing that Bayer Leverkusen can occasionally be susceptible to slightly collapsing.
What do you mean by slightly?
Like all the time. I think Dortmund have very good chances of getting the Europa League spot. And as such, I mean, obviously this is a must-win game for both of these sides. Stuttgart a little bit less than Dortmund, but Stuttgart also don't want to just ride out the season and kind of fall apart, because that can have a bad knock-on effect. Taifun Korkut.
But I mean, they are a promoted side, and I think sitting
Yes.
in 8th, they are very comfortable with where they are, and I don't think they have tons of pressure going into this game. Meanwhile, Dortmund will feel a lot of pressure. Anyway, I'm just going to point out that Frankfurt play in the next 2 games against Wolfsburg and Gladbach, and I know Frankfurt are a very good team, but so are Wolfsburg, and maybe Marco Rose does us a favor, and if Dortmund theoretically win the next 2 games, then it could be a 1-point game or 1-point run in the final 5 games of the season. So I wouldn't completely rule it out, even though Frankfurt still have the luxury of the automatic win against Schalke, which Dortmund do not have. But I mean, it's very unlikely, and I agree with you, but I'm not saying it's 100% impossible. More like 99%. Maybe we need smart laws to figure that one out. But yeah, just wanted to drop that one out there.
I agree. Our ray of sunshine, our 1%er, Lars, he will definitely say Dortmund will absolutely make the Champions League, because that's,
Yeah, especially Lars who predicted from the outset that Dortmund would finish 5th.
I know. And God, isn't that going to be galling when we all have to eat crow? And he's like, yay, I'm right, but I'm not really happy about it.
Yeah, smug yet unhappy Lars. Anywho.
So anyway, moving on. We've already recorded over an hour.
Yeah, so quickly, Akanji.
Akanji, yes. Contract extension, I really like it. I think he's a very good central defender, and so I'm happy to see him continue on at Borussia Dortmund.
Yeah, I think his trajectory is looking positive. I think he was criticized, sometimes criticized too harshly, but I think he had it coming in other times. But I think for the most part, he has overcome whatever was bothering him with his hip injury. And I think he, as a player, has improved. And as Lars, I think, said himself on Twitter, he pretty much brings everything you want in a modern center back. Maybe there's a bit more consistency to be hoped for, but nevertheless, adding at least another year helps Dortmund. I mean, Dortmund are heavily linked with a million center backs right now. Obviously, Zagadou, you don't know what his future is. Same with Hummels, not getting any younger. And we've talked about the space between Dortmund's defensive line and the rest. I think that also has something to do. Dortmund trying to compensate for Hummels' pace. So as much as I like Mats Hummels and think he can maybe achieve Dortmund legend status, I don't know. That depends on how you feel about his move to Bayern Munich. But I think there is going to be a transition away from him also not too far in the future, unless, of course, the politics in sport have a different notion. He's still a very powerful player in that locker room, and he has a lot of upside still. His build-up play is quite amazing. His positional play is really good, and all that. But I think at some point the lack of pace is just too much to bear, especially for a team that needs to push high up by default. Because if you're one of the top teams in football, that's what you do. So yeah, it's a nice banker to have Akanji there. Let's put it this way. So yeah, it's also interesting that these things now apparently happen in secret and then just randomly get leaked at some point. I'm not quite sure what's up with that and why they don't like to hype or announce their players. I also don't know exactly what that extension was about, because I think he only added 1 year to his deal, right? So it's not like a 5-year long-term commitment, etc., etc. It's just what it is.
But it's good to have it, and to have at least like one construction site's been taken care of, And I agree with you. I mean, his best years, if you look at the development of players and age and stuff like that, are actually still ahead of him.
Yes.
Because central defenders tend to get better later than it's like goalkeepers. They tend to mature later in their age development than other ones. I mean, Sergio Ramos, as much as I don't like the guy, he's still, even at a quote unquote advanced age, a really good central defender. So that's good to see with Akanji. And I agree with you on Hummels, who knows 1, 2, 3 more years and then go play for Inter Miami.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what's going to happen with Hummels. That's it can be so that by this time next year he's not even a starter anymore, or it could be that he is still a rock in defense. Yeah, it can go either way. Depends on a little bit on how much motivation he can find. It depends on obviously what happens with Rose and how he assesses the situation, and obviously what alternatives Dortmund can acquire. So a lot of moving factors. Matthias, I would be remiss to ask you for your Twitter handle before you leave a prediction, so please do that now.
So the prediction would be, I'm going to go against my gut and be optimistic and say Dortmund are going to win 3-2 and Haaland scores 2 goals and is smiling again, and Twitter can finally shut up about him leaving after the season, at least for 24 hours. And my Twitter handle is at Matthiasuk.
Very well. I'm not quite sure because I feel like there's I'm overthinking this one, because on the one hand, Dortmund would usually now throw this game because, of course, they would after a great Champions League performance, but because everyone expects them now to play poorly, maybe then they surprise again by having another good game and then screwing up against Man City. So basically the question is not if the screw up comes, but when it comes. Will it be against Stuttgart? I don't know, but I also am not really feeling Dortmund winning this convincingly or anything of that such. So I'm just going to go with my gut and saying if I predicted 2-2, which I'm doing now, maybe this will help Dortmund win it. You know, what I'm trying to do here, I'm just trying to out-jinx the jinx. I don't know if it works for a second time, but not for lack of trying. Anyway, Matthias, thank you again for coming on for this 1 hour and 11 minute now long session of Yellowwallpod. We shall be back, as I said previously, on Monday with more. Until then, please find us and subscribe to our podcast, if you will, on YouTube or iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, etc. And you can follow all of us at Yellowwallpod. You can follow me at Stefan Butzko, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that, whatever. And yeah, as always, thank you for listening and good